Hi, folks. Welcome. Thanks for joining us after lunch. My name is Emily Northrup. I'm a grants administrator in the homeownership division at the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. Thank you so much for joining us for our conversation today about market insights and opportunities. We're going to have a really great conversation with our panelist, Mofe Ige. She's with us all the way from Dallas. She works with Freddie Mac, and we're just thrilled to get her insights. Before I pass the mic, two quick housekeeping announcements. First, we're not quite full yet, but as folks trickle in, if we do need to make space, I would ask you to condense towards the middle and leave some of those aisle spots available for latecomers. And if you have questions, we can handle that in two ways. You can enter them into the Q&A portion on the Whova app, and I can read them for our panelists. Or if you'd like to ask yourself towards the end of the session, we'll have a mic at the front, and you're welcome to come forward and present your questions. So without further ado, let's give a big round of applause, warm welcome for our speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mofe Ige. I'm going to spare you all the trouble of pronouncing the first name. So I go by Mofe for short. And you could say, okay, M-O-F-I, that should be fine, right? But because I could be a little bit extra, I added an extra F and an extra I, so that's Mofe. So I'm an economist in the single-family division at Freddie Mac, and I came in from Dallas yesterday. It's my first time in Washington State. Thank you. It's my first time in at this conference as well, so it's a double for me. But it's really exciting to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak. Okay, so let's get into it. So this is one of the boxes I have to check. So the summary of this slide is just that whatever perceptions or opinions I share into this presentation are my views and the views of the researchers and the economists that worked on this presentation, and doesn't represent Freddie Mac's or the management's opinions. Okay, that's in the back. Let's get into it. So the housing market is tight, right? Well, things might be beginning to ease now based on the Fed's decision to cut rate last week, right? It's the first rate cut in over 4 years. So we're seeing that things might begin to ease up over the next couple of months, let's say. But if I take a quick poll of the audience today and ask, what are the top challenges you think home buyers are facing? Top 2, top 3 challenges that home buyers. Awesome. So interest rate. Anybody else? What's that? Exactly. Yeah. So interest rate. Okay. I was like, what happened to my slides? Okay. So interest rate, inadequate housing supply, right? That's really causing the market to be tight. And so I'm going to start off my presentation today by providing some color on interest rates and see how that's affecting the mortgage market. Okay. I keep waiting for someone to push my slides. I have the clicker. Okay. So the figure to the left of the slide shows the average weekly average 30-year fixed mortgage rate all the way from 1971 to July 2024. And believe it or not, in the early 1980s, mortgage rates were as high as close to 18%. But thank God, I'll let that sink in there, right? 18%. But thank God it's been dropping, and now it's single digits. 2022, 2023, given inflation and the Fed's decision to increase interest rates, we see the upward trend in mortgage rates. But as of July 2024, it was about 6.8%, 6.99%. But the market has been anticipating that the Feds are going to cut rates. And so we've seen that the mortgage rate has been dropping. As of last week, it was about 6.1% for a 30-year fixed mortgage contract. So 6% is better than close to 8% we had last year, right? But it's still not as good as 3%, 4% that we had like in the 2021s and 2022. And so one implication of the rising mortgage rate is that many people are just locked into their homes because of the low mortgage rates they have. And so in the graph to the right, what I'm showing here is we try to quantify the dollar amount of the mortgage lock-in effect. And what we did was to pull in all the 15-year and 30-year mortgages in our portfolio and then compute the difference between the outstanding balance on the loan and the present value of the mortgage at the present interest rates. So for example, if a mortgage has like a 3% mortgage rate, right? And then we compute what's the balance on the loan at the current 3%, and then subtract from that the present value of the loan at, say, 7%, right? And so that's the average lock-in effect. And so we plot that on the y-axis, and on the x-axis, we just look at it over time. So the way to read this chart, this figure, is anything below 0 represents a negative lock-in effect, which means the interest rate on the mortgage is lower, right? No, it's higher than the prevailing interest rate. So there's an incentive for the borrower to refinance, right? Anything above 0 means there's a positive lock-in effect. So just hold on to whatever mortgage rate you have, because what you have locked into your mortgage is better than the prevailing interest rate, right? And what we see between March 2019 and December 2021 was that the lock-in effect was negative, right? And so that gave the average borrower an incentive to refinance. And indeed, we did see a refinance boom in 2021, 2020, towards the end of 2021 and 2020s as well. But then, start of 2020, right? 2022, when rates started going up, we see the lock-in effect turn positive, and it kept on increasing, right? As of March 2024, when we did this analysis, it sits at around 50,000 on average. And so people are just locked into their mortgages, right? And that means refinance activity is super low because nobody wants to trade 3% for 7%, 6%, right? So that's what we are seeing in terms of the implication for interest mortgage rates. And just to reinforce the lock-in effect, right, the effect of having really low mortgage rates, what we show here is the mortgage interest distribution at origination. So we take all single-family, active single-family, owner-occupied purchases and refi. Okay, that sounds so much better. In our portfolio that have been open since 1990, but we're active as of January 2024. And we look at the distribution of all interest rates. So we bucket it into like 6 different categories, less than 3% up all the way to 7%. And what we see here is that out of all mortgages, actually this is for the US, not just for Freddie Mac portfolio, over 60% of mortgages are tied in, have mortgage rates less than 4%, right? Isn't that striking? More than 6 in 10 mortgage rates are below 4%, which means refinance activity is pretty low. But I think one thing I want to highlight here is, back right here, right, in this greater than 7% bucket, we still see that 5% of all mortgages are in this bucket, and that amounts to over 2 million mortgages. So right now, there are still over 2 million mortgages that have interest rate greater than 7%. And I think that now that the interest rate is dropping, we might start seeing some traction on refi, right? So people that probably signed into their mortgages last year when rates were super close to 8%, those people might be thinking about refinancing now, or probably want to wait a little bit longer for rates to keep dropping and then they jump into the market. But this pool right here might be those who might be in the morning for refi right now, given the rates are close to 6%. Okay, I had something very important to say on this one. So even though rates are really low right now, most people are locked into the low mortgage rates right now, and refinance activities are low. People will still have to give that up because life happens, right? People would have to move due to job reasons. Probably they have to move from Texas to Chicago or wherever because of job changes. Or as their family grows, they have to move up, right? My family is a typical example. We had to give up a 2.3 interest rate for 5.7 because we wanted to move to a bigger place. I feel so emotionally attached to 2.3%, but well, life happens and we had to give that up. But people will have to move and life happens and people will have to give that up. But we're just seeing the majority of the people are still locked into the low mortgage rates that they are in right now. Okay, so we've looked at mortgage rates. Now let's look at housing inventory. So to the left of the slide, I'm showing the trend in total homes inventory between 2000 and 2024. And we can just focus on, say, the last 15 years. We've seen a downward slope in total homes inventory. And again, this has implications of what we see in terms of housing supply and what we see on house prices. Over time, it's been dropping. And to the right of the chart of the slide, what we did was to split out total homes inventory into existing homes inventory in the blue line and new homes inventory in the orange line. What just stands out on this slide right here is that the trend in existing home inventory is very similar to what we see for total homes inventory, which means the decline in total homes inventory is driven by the fact that existing homes inventory is dropping. For new homes inventory, in the last few years, we've been seeing slight increase in growth. It's been trending upward in the next couple of years. And so we are seeing new homes come into the market, not at a fast pace, but slowly but steadily it's coming onto the market. And then if you take the ratio of new homes to existing homes in the last couple of years, that ratio has been increasing. Even though total homes inventory is low, but we're seeing some traction on new homes inventory. Okay. Now, drilling into new housing supply, which includes total housing completions and manufactured home shipments, we look between 1968 and 2023. And if you look at just the blue bars, the dark blue bars right here, we see that the new homes housing supply is significantly lower compared to what we had before the Great Financial Crisis. So before the Great Financial Crisis, it used to be on average above 1,500, right? But now as of 2010, it dropped to like around 750. But in recent times, we're seeing that this number has been sticking upward. And as of 2023, the green bar right here is close to what we had pre the Great Recession. So things are low, but things are picking up similar to what we had before. So that's some welcome good news. Okay, now we look at entry-level supply. So we define entry-level supply as the share of single-family construction that is 1,400 square feet or less. And we look at the trend between 1942 and 2023. And earlier on in history, entry-level homes used to account for close to 70% of all single-family construction. And then we see the decline over decades. As of 2023, it's less than 10%. So entry-level homes account for less than 10% of all single-family construction. And that has severe implications, especially for first-time home buyers, whose starter homes are more likely to be entry-level homes. And this could also impact their purchase decisions because they have lower ability to save for more expensive homes. And if there's a shortage of entry-level homes, what does that imply for them, right? Okay. So still on inventory housing supply here, what we try to do is to map the housing supply across different metro areas in the country. So the housing supply ratio, or the month supply, however you want to call it, measures the length of time it takes for the existing supply of homes on the market to be bought at the market's current pace of sales, assuming that no new homes come on the market. And it's a very simple calculation. It's just inventory divided by sales, and it's also used to measure the balance between housing demand and supply. So where you have higher supply, it represents a buyer's market, and where you have lower supply, it represents a seller's market. And so the rule of thumb is any ratio greater than 6 means there's relatively adequate supply in that market, and anything less than 6 means housing supply is inadequate in that market. And so for each of the metros, we're able to calculate the housing stock ratio, and we plot that on this heat map. So to read this heat map is super easy. The light color, like the lightest color, yellow, just means the housing stock ratio in that market is less than 2, which means it's super inadequate. And as the color increases in intensity, the housing stock ratio increases. And the darkest color, the darkest brown color here, means the housing stock ratio is greater than 6. So I'll talk about the whole country, and then I'll talk about Washington State, because I know that's what this audience is interested about. But I think even though there's a chronic shortage of single-family homes in the nation, we're seeing that there are more darker colors in the South. So if you look at Texas, if you look at Florida, and then if you look at a couple of spots here as well, New Mexico as well, there are more darker colors, which means the housing supply in those markets is relatively adequate compared to the other parts of the country where the colors are mostly light. Right, so in the Midwest and some parts of the South of the East Coast is light, right, which means housing supply is inadequate. And then in Washington State, there's kind of like a play of colors, right? You have some dark colors, and then you have light colors, like in Seattle Metro right here is light, but then you have some other colors as well, which means depending on the metro you're in, right, the housing supply kind of varies based on what we're seeing here. So this is for single-family homes. Given the recent interest in condo homes, we did a similar calculation for condos as well. And things change slightly. So Texas and Florida still have the really dark colors, especially Florida has more dark colors, which means the housing supply for condos is higher in these markets compared to areas where the colors are lighter. And then in Washington State as well, we see more darker colors pop up here. So the housing supply for condos is relatively higher for single-family homes, from what we're seeing on the chart. Okay, so in many of the research we do, we're interested in looking at the impact of different housing indicators on the low to moderate income consumers. So I define low to moderate income as those whose income are 80% or less of the area median income. And because low to moderate income consumers is more like a tongue twister for me, I'm just going to say LMI from now. So I'll just say LMI. So here we're interested in seeing what share of active listings in a particular metro area is affordable to the LMIs living in those metro, and where are those metros concentrated. So what we did was to get CoreLogic's multiple listing MLS data on active listings and do some back of the envelope calculation to say, for a particular metro, if we take the number of active listings on the market at a particular point in time, what share of those can LMIs in those metro afford? And so what we did was to calculate the number for each metro and then plot it again on our heat map. We love heat maps so much. It just conveys the information really, really beautiful. So light colors represent really low active listings that are affordable to LMIs. And as the color increases in intensity, right, goes from light blue to dark blue, we see that the share of active listings affordable to the LMI increases. And what just stands out is if you look at the Midwest, what we know about the Midwest actually stands out true here. We see that many listings for quite a number of metros in the Midwest, there's a very high share of active listings that are affordable to the LMI, right? Compared to ICOS metro area, for example, in Seattle, just 12% of active listings are affordable to the low to moderate income population, right? And this is for single family homes. So in Texas as well, I have to mention Texas because I'm from Texas, just 18% of the active listings in the DFW area are affordable to LMIs. In New York, it's even worse, it's 9%. It's an ICOS metro area, and not even talking about like San Jose, about 10%. So we do the same thing for condos, but now we see, knowing that condos are relatively inexpensive compared to single-family homes, we're seeing an improvement in like the affordability ratio. So for example, on the previous slide, we have seen that in Seattle, just 12% of active listings for single-family homes were affordable to LMIs. When we look at condos, it goes up to 43%. So for households in the market for condo homes, we're seeing that there's a greater share of affordable listings that LMIs could afford in Seattle. And for New York as well, it moved from 9% to 40%. So condos are relatively more affordable than single-family homes. Okay, now we've looked at mortgage rates, we've looked at housing supply. Now let's talk about home prices. So to the left of the chart, I'm showing the Freddie Mac House Price Index as of July 2024, going from 2000 to 2024, and it's a year-over-year change. So for example, the number for July 2024 just says how has house prices changed compared to July 2023. So it just looks at a year change. There's a lot of drama going on right here, and I'll just skip that. Just focus on the beginning of 2024. We see the house prices was going up, right, as denoted by the increasing trend. But then as of July, I think sometimes middle of the year, we can see the downward turn, which means that the housing market is beginning to cool, right? Right now, year-over-year change, the house price increased about 4.4% nationally. But this 4.4% marks a lot of heterogeneity across the country, right? It didn't increase 4.4% in every single metro, right? And so what we did was to take that number and break it out by different metro areas in the country. And so the dark green color, the darkest green color represents a house price appreciation greater than 6%. The lighter green color represents house price appreciation between 3 to 5%. The orange color, 0 to 2%, and the really dark orange color is less than 0, which means instead of house price appreciating, it actually depreciated. So it was lower July 24 compared to July 2023. And so we see a play of colors on the map. Mostly green for the most part, which actually reinforces the fact that we're actually seeing an increase year over year as of July. But then we see orange spots in Texas, in Florida. In Seattle, so the Seattle metro is green, but other metros are orange. The green color just means house prices grew faster in those metros compared to other areas. And if you triangulate what I'm showing on this graph to the housing supply information I showed a couple of slides ago, areas where the housing supply was really, really inadequate are areas where the house price is actually appreciating faster, right? So we are seeing Texas and Florida, the housing supply in those areas were really high compared to other metro areas, but we are seeing that the house prices didn't grow in those metro areas compared to others. So in some metro areas, house prices actually went down compared to what they were previously. And so we're seeing that there's a lot of changes going on in the house price space, but then overall, we're seeing that prices are still higher compared to what they were a year ago. Okay, so still on house prices, here we're showing the trend in entry-level home prices and the trend in high-end home prices. So we define entry-level homes as homes that sell at 75% or less of the median, and high-end homes as homes that sell at 125% of the median or higher. And the take-home from this graph is that the trend, the rate of increase in entry-level homes is higher, is very steep compared to the growth in high-end homes. And who are those most likely to get entry-level homes? First-time home buyers. And in recent years, we've seen an increase in demand from first-time home buyers. So a strong demand from first-time home buyers combined with the low supply of inventory, houses for sale, has led to a surge in entry-level home prices. And again, this has implications on affordability for first-time home buyers who have lower ability to save for down payment on more expensive homes. Okay, finally on home prices. So another implication of rising home prices is that it helps existing homeowners to build home equity, to build equity on their homes. And so the prices of houses have risen or appreciated more significantly compared to the outstanding debt on the loan. So here we are showing the value of the US housing stock between 1990 and as of March 2024, and that's denoted by this area on the map. If you take out the outstanding, if you look at the outstanding debt on the loan, denoted by the blue area, it's just this small area on the map. So of the chart, rather, not the map. So if you look at the total value of all housing, and if you take out the blue area, what we're left with is home equity. So this represents how much homeowners are currently sitting on. As of March 2024, the total value of all housing stock in the US was about $46 trillion. If you take out the $13 trillion in outstanding mortgages and debt, we're left with $32 trillion. So this picture to me is just, you know how they say pictures are worth 1,000 words? If I'm trying to tell someone that homeownership is a great way to build intergenerational wealth, I'm just going to show them this chart right here, right? See how much equity that homeowners are sitting on. And it just means that there's just, so people come to me and ask me, oh, should I get into homeownership now? I'm like, if you're able to and you can afford it, interest rates, mortgage rates do matter, but you can always refinance. But see how much equity you could have grown within a short period of time. Just getting on, you can always tap into this equity for some other family needs that you want to later on. Just get in and start building the wealth, right? So this slide for me was like one of the key slides for this presentation. It just shows the importance of home ownership the more we talk about it. Okay, so now we've looked at the kind of like the macro environment. Now let's get more into home buyer details. So before I get into that further, one thing I would like to talk about is the homeownership rate, just to provide some context to see how far we've come and how much work exists for us to do in terms of getting people into homeownership. So here we're looking over time at the homeownership rate by different race and ethnic groups between 2016, first quarter of 2016, all the way up to the second quarter of 2024. And what the main takeaway from here is that slowly but steady, right, the homeownership rate has been increasing for all racial and ethnic groups, even though there's been some ups and downs along the way, but it's higher than what it was in 2016. It's highest for non-Hispanic white at about 74% as of Q2 2024, as denoted in the green line. In the gray line, it's for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. It's about 63%. Latino Americans, the homeownership rate is at 49%, and for Black Americans, it's in the yellow line at 45%. So even though we've seen that there's a wide gap between the non-Hispanic white and minorities, we're seeing that the gap has been shrinking over time. For example, the white-black gap decreased between 2019 Q2 from about 33% to 29% in 2024 Q2. So we're seeing that the gap is actually shrinking. For the white Latino gap, decreased a little bit, not as much as it did for Black Americans, from 27% to about 26% within the same period of time. And for the white Asian gap, it's decreased from 15% to about 12% within the same period of time as well. So we're seeing that the gap is shrinking slowly but surely. Because of the interest in Washington State, the next thing I did was to look at the homeownership rate for Washington State and see how that compares to the national numbers. So we can see a similar pattern, right? The homeownership rate is highest for non-Hispanic whites. It's 69% in the state of Washington for non-Hispanic whites. Next is for Asian Americans at 62%, very similar to the national rate. Latino Americans come in third at 48% compared to 51%, so it's lower. And for Black Americans, it's about 32% compared to 44%. So even though we see a similar pattern between the national homeownership rate and the Washington State homeownership rate, the gap is largest the difference is largest for Black Americans. It's a double-digit difference, right? 44% at the national level, but 32% in the state of Washington. So we're seeing that these Black Americans are facing the greatest barrier in terms of like achieving the homeownership goal. Okay, so now getting more into market opportunities. So we've seen that high interest rates, high house prices, and inadequate supply of affordable homes is actually making the housing market really tight. But what we do actually see is that there are opportunities to still get people into homeownership even in the current macroeconomic environment. So one thing that my team did was to create a methodology that tracks and assesses affordability across different metro areas. And to do that, what we did was just a very simple calculation: calculate the maximum house price that a typical household in a metro area can afford, and compare that to the median house price in the metro area. And so we defined maximum house price as the house price a household can afford, such that the monthly mortgage payment is not more than a third or 31% of the monthly household income, assuming they come to the table with 3% down payment, and we're assuming a 30-year fixed mortgage contract. So why 31%? Most lenders require a front-end DTI of 31% and a back-end DTI of 43%. And so we make those assumptions in the calculation, and then we're able to calculate the affordability ratio, which is just dividing the maximum house price a typical household in an area can afford by the median house price. So if the affordability ratio is greater than 1, it means that metro is affordable to the typical household living in that area. So for example, Ames, Iowa, right? The median house price sits around, if I can see this clearly, around $250, but the maximum house price they can afford is close to $500. So we see that the green line is to the right of the green dot is to the right of the blue dot, and if you take the ratio, it's about 1.8. So Ames, Iowa is relatively affordable. If the ratio is just equal to 1, it means the metro area is just affordable. As we can see in the DMV area, the blue dot and the green dot overlap. But now if the ratio is less than 1, as in the case of Santa Cruz, it means the green dots, which is the maximum house price the typical household in the area can afford, is significantly lower than the median house price in that area. For example, in Santa Cruz, it's close to 1.2 million, but the maximum house price a typical household can afford is just about 500,000. So Santa Cruz is very unaffordable to the typical household in that area. So does that make sense? Okay. So we take that methodology and apply it across, again, metros across the US to see what does that look like in terms of affordability, what metros are affordable and what metros are unaffordable. So there's some kind of polarization going on. To the left of the map is mostly red, right? And to the right of the map is mostly green, except a few red streaks in some coastal areas. So the way to read this heat map is if the metro area has a really dark red color, it means the affordability ratio is less than 0.9, which means that metro is unaffordable to the typical household in that area. If it is tinged red, right, slightly red, it means the affordability ratio is between 0.9 and 1, so borderline affordable. And then if it's green, it means it's affordable to the typical household. And the more intense the green color, the more affordable the metro is. And so we see that the darkest green color is in the Midwest. Again, housing is relatively cheaper in the Midwest compared to other parts of the country. But then we see Washington State, it's all red, right? And then not surprising, California as well. But despite a rise in interest rate, we see that about 73% of metros are still considered affordable to the typical households living there. So even though the market is tight, there are still many metros that are affordable, and there are still opportunities to get people into homeownership. So to the right, we have two tables. The first table shows the 10 most affordable CBSAs, and then the bottom table shows the 10 least affordable CBSAs. And for each metro area, we are looking at two bars. The dark blue bar shows the affordability ratio in 2021, and then the yellowish, goldish colored bar shows the affordability ratio in 2024. So we can see what happened over time to see, is affordability increasing or is it reducing? And so what we see is that most of the affordable metros are in the Midwest, right? Like 8 of them are in Illinois, not surprising. But the takeaway from the top table is metros that were affordable in 2021 are still affordable in 2024. If we look at the 10 least affordable CBSAs, we see most of them are in California, right? Luckily, none of the Washington metros show up on this map, on this table. Most of the 10 least affordable CBSAs are in Hawaii, California, and I think one in Arizona. So this is what we're seeing in terms of affordability for single-family homes. Next, we, again, because of our interest in looking at the LMI population, we try to see what metros or what share of metros are affordable to the LMI population. Previously, we had looked at all the households living in a particular metro area. Now we are putting an income restriction. Say if we just limit it to just LMIs living in those areas, what share of metros across the country are affordable to LMIs? So now we see more red spots pop up, right, along the east, and then the metros in the West gets even darker. And so we've seen that although 73% on the previous slide, 73% of metros were affordable to the typical household, now just 51% of metros are affordable to the typical low to moderate income consumers. So these consumers are more likely to be affected by the affordability challenges in the economy we're seeing today. And on the table on the right shows the top 10 CBSAs with the highest decline in affordability, right? And again, we are comparing between 2021 and 2024 to see how things changed. And ta-da, we see one metro in Washington State pop up. So the Kennewick Metro used to be affordable. As of 2021, the affordability ratio was slightly higher than 1, but now it sits slightly less than 0.8. So it's no longer affordable to the typical LMI living in that metro area. So we do the same thing for condos. We see less red on the map, more green, right? Which just shows that condos are more affordable to the typical LMIs compared to single-family homes. So in over 83% of metro areas, medium-priced condos remain affordable to LMIs living in those metro areas. And then when we look at the table to the right, top 10 CBSs with the highest decline over the 3-year period, we see 3 CBSs in Washington pop up, right? They used to be affordable before, greater than 1 affordability as of 2021. 2024, they're slightly around 0.8 affordability. So they're not as affordable as they used to be before. Okay, so one thing our data tells us is that LMIs are not buying medium-priced homes; they are buying moderately priced homes. And so we adjusted our methodology to, instead of looking at medium-priced homes in the metro areas where they're living, we're looking at moderately priced home. And moderately priced home is just 80% of the median. So if the median is 300,000, 80% of the median is just 240,000. So instead of using 300,000 in our affordability calculation, we use 240,000, right, to see how that changes the affordability ratio. And things actually pick up, right? So the left side of the map is still red, and we still see some greens. But instead of looking at 51% of the metros that were affordable to the LMIs, right? Now 73% of the metros are now affordable to the LMIs when we look at moderately priced homes, right? Homes that are not as expensive as the medium priced homes. We see that the affordability actually improves. And to the right of the slide, the top 10 CBSs with the highest decline, most of them are in California and Arizona, but then again, 2 CBSAs, 2 metro areas in Washington pop up. used to be affordable before, but now are less affordable to the typical LMIs living in the metro area. We do the same thing for condos. Now the map is mostly green, just a few red streaks in California, Arizona, and I think some places in Florida. Again, the darkest colors are in the Midwest, which means the Midwest is typically more affordable compared to other parts of the country. Washington State's no longer red now. Green, right? Light green, not as dark as what we see in the Midwest or some part of Texas, but it means it's typically affordable to, the condos are typically affordable to the LMIs living there when we look at moderately priced condos. And top 10 CBSAs with the highest decline in affordability, one in Idaho, Arizona, California, Florida, yay, none in Washington State. So we don't see like any of the metros in Washington State pop up as being less affordable compared to where it was in 2024 when we're looking at the top 10 metro areas. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce a new methodology. So we've seen that even given the house prices, given the limited inventory, housing supply, and even increase in mortgage rates, there are still opportunities to help potential home buyers get into homeownership. But then there's still one of the biggest challenges that home buyers are facing, especially first-time home buyers, and that is bringing money to the table to close, right? Looking for money for down payment or bringing money to close. And so what we do here is to calculate the cash to close shortfall for different metro areas across the country. And to do that, what we did was to take the median single family home in a particular metro area and overlay 3 assumptions. One, we assume that the buyer comes to the table with 3% down payment. We also assume that they come with 6 months savings, and we also assume a 2.2 closing cost. So based on these 3 assumptions, we're able to see what's the cash to close shortfall for each metro area. And looking at the map, we, again, our heat map shows the different cash to close shortfall across the metro areas. The really light color means the cash to close shortfall is less than 10,000. The next blue color shows the cash to close shortfall is between 10 and 20, and then it goes all the way up to more than 60,000. And we can see that the same polarization is going on. To the right of the map, it's mostly light blue colored, and to the left of the map, it's darker colors. The darkest color, more than 60,000, is in California. Like the really, really dark colors are in California. We see Washington State as well has like really dark colors, which just means that the cash to close shortfall is higher in Washington State, for example, compared to places like Texas or other places in the Midwest. And this isn't too surprising. The cost of living is higher in these states compared to like the Midwest, for example. And so the cash required at closing remains significant for single-family homes in most markets, with the median amount north of 14,000 nationally, but it's almost double in Washington State. So the median cash to close shortfall is about 28,000 compared to the national number of about 14,000. Okay, we do the same thing for condos. Again, the hue of the colors get lighter, but what we see is the median cash to close shortfall at the national level is about 12,000 for condos, but in Washington State, again, it's higher at 18,000. But we're seeing that the cash to close shortfall is lower for condos compared to single-family homes. Now, getting into the final section of today's presentation, I provide or show some tailored content for some metro areas in Washington State to be able to highlight certain opportunities. Okay, so we had seen affordability ratios for different metros across the country. Now we're zooming our lens to look at different metro areas in Washington State. And so the map to the left just maps different metro areas in Washington State. And so we're looking at the LMI affordability for medium price single family homes. The really dark color just means the affordability ratio is really low, between 0.5 and 0.9, which means these metros are relatively unaffordable to the typical LMIs living in those metro areas. I'm sure the colors on this map shouldn't be too surprising to people in the audience. And then the lighter colors just means the metro area is borderline affordable, the affordability ratio between 0.9 and 1. So looking at the affordability ratio for median price single family homes, It's all red. Typically unaffordable. But then when we look at moderately priced homes, there's some hope, right? We see some metro areas become borderline affordable. So Seattle still remains as red as it can be, still very unaffordable to the typical LMI. But we see Spokane is borderline affordable, Yakima as well, Kennewick, Olympia, are now borderline affordable when we're looking at moderately priced homes. We do the same thing for condos. The really dark colors mean affordability ratio, less than 0.9, which means it's super unaffordable. The light colors means borderline affordable, and then green means it's affordable to the typical LMI living in those areas. So mostly red across different metros, but we see some green, which is some good news. But then when we look at moderately priced condos, everything is green, which means the moderately priced condo, these metro areas are relatively affordable to LMIs in the market for condos, for moderately priced condos. So we see an improvement in affordability when we move from medium priced condos to moderately priced condos. Now we look at the cash to close required at closing and just try to see what does that look like across different metros in the state. For Seattle, it's about $38,000 when looking at the single-family cash to close for LMI borrowers. The median amount is about $38,000 in Seattle. In Spokane, it's about $21,000, so it's lower. It's I think this should be Yakima, right? So this is slightly lower compared to what we see in Seattle and Spokane. But when we look at condos, the colors are a little bit lighter. So for Seattle, it goes from about 38,000 to about 25,000. So the cash to close shortfall is lower for condos compared to single family homes. And again, for Spokane, it's about 14,000 compared to what we had seen for single family homes at 21,000. And the rest of the map is mostly light, which just means the cash to close shortfall is lower for condos compared to single family homes. Okay, so in the next two slides, we zoom in on two metro areas. So we look at Seattle Metro and Spokane Metro to look at the affordability ratio for counties within those metro areas. So this just shows the three counties in the Seattle MSA, and we read the affordability ratio the same way. The really dark color just means these counties are very unaffordable to the typical household living in those counties, while green means it's affordable. And we see that only Pierce County is affordable out of the three counties in Seattle Metro. You guys know more about this than I do, and why it's more affordable in Pierce County compared to the others. But that's what the data is showing, that this is actually more affordable to live in compared to the other two counties. And on the right, we show two tables. The first table shows the population distribution for the United States, and we compare that to Seattle Metro. So in the United States, Black Americans account for about 12% of the total population, Asian Americans about 5.7%, Latino Americans about 18%, and non-Hispanic white close to 60% of the US population. In Seattle Metro, it's Black Americans make up less, it's about 6.7% of the total population in Seattle. Majority, like there's an increase from 5.7 to about close to 19% for Asian Americans. And Latino Americans, it's lower. The share is lower for Seattle compared to the national number, but then we're seeing more non-Hispanic white Americans in Seattle Metro compared to the US. And the table on the bottom just gives us more housing indicators for Seattle Metro compared to the United States overall. So when we look at the share of active listings affordable to LMI, is about 24% in the US, but it's significantly lower in the Seattle Metro. It's about 17%. So 17% of all active listings are affordable to the LMI population in Seattle. Again, housing stock ratio, it's significantly lower in Seattle compared to the national average of about 2.8. And the cash to close shortfall, again, it's more than double in Seattle compared to the number we see nationally. So we see that overall, Seattle is considered less affordable compared to the average numbers across the country. Finally, we do the same thing for Spokane, and then we look at the two counties here, 0.9 to 1.0, borderline affordable. We don't see the really, really dark red color similar to what we are seeing in the other two counties for Seattle, but we see that these two counties are borderline affordable. If we look at the population distribution, we see that there are significantly less Black Americans in Spokane compared to the national average, slightly more Asian Americans, fewer Latino Americans compared to the national numbers, and significantly more non-Hispanic white. About 74% of the total population are non-Hispanic white compared to 59% for the national average. And looking at some housing indicators, just what really stands out here is, again, even though the housing stock ratio is for Spokane, close to what we see for the national number, it's lower, 2.5% less compared to 2.8. And the cash to close shortfall as well is about 21,000 compared to about 17,000 at the national level. So compared to Seattle, Spokane seems to be relatively a more affordable market. But we still see that there are opportunities to get people into homeownership, given the numbers that we're seeing on the slide. Okay, I think I finished a little bit ahead of time. But to conclude, in the past few years, we've seen a lot of changes in the economy, right, and which have affected affordability, both for existing homeowners and potential home buyers. But despite that, we still see, based on the slides that I've shown earlier, we still see there's a lot of opportunities to get people into homeownership, right, especially when you look at moderately priced homes, which is that many LMIs are still able to get into homeownership. One of the most cited challenges for first-time home buyers is securing down payment, right? How do I get money to close, money to put down as down payment? And so Freddie Mac, we've developed this tool called DPA1, and I'm sure many people in the audience have heard about our DPA1 tool. If you haven't, go to freddiemac.com. It's a free online tool that hosts down payment assistance programs, and it just eases the matching between borrowers and different down payment assistance programs and grants that they could be qualified for. And it just does the matching and makes it super easy to be able to help borrowers get different down payment assistance. And also to address some of the housing supply challenges, we have a couple of products that actually address the limited housing supply. So we have Choice Home, that's kind of geared towards manufactured housing. And then we have Choice Renovation, that is a renovation financing that addresses the aging housing stock and then also the need for more affordable housing. So these are two great products that try to expand the affordable housing supply that we have currently. So even though we know that financial barrier is one of the biggest challenges to get into homeownership, knowledge barrier is also a very significant one, right? Research has shown that knowledge actually impedes people from getting into homeownership, especially first-time home buyers or fourth-generation home buyers who probably don't have priors about housing. And so targeted outreach, counseling, and financial literacy programs can help overcome the knowledge barriers. So again, Freddie Mac, we're there to help, right? We have our Credit Smart Suite. You can always check that out on the website as well. Anybody can take it. It helps with financial education and financial literacy. High school students can take it. It just helps build the financial empowerment. We also have borrower help centers for current borrowers, helps with counseling for those who are going through, for example, hardship in paying their rent and paying their mortgages. We have borrower help centers that can provide targeted counseling for them. So as Freddie Mac, we are committed to making home possible, and I hope that information that I presented today would help you identify market opportunities that you didn't know existed and could help you inform your strategies going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that presentation. What a fantastic visualization of all of the data. I learned so much. We have a few questions if you have some time to take them from the audience. I can ask some from the app. Thanks for putting these in, guys. And then I'm going to stick the microphone up here if you have something that you'd like to ask specifically. So the first...
Emily, I was going to say that I have one of Freddie Mac's finest in the room, Eric.
Oh, perfect.
Who would assist me in taking questions.
Great.
Yeah.
So the first question we have is a question about insurability. So we're curious if you have any thoughts about, is there a correlation between housing availability in certain regions and insurability in those same regions? And could you speak to what the lending market is doing to adjust for insurability of homes in regions with higher housing stock?
By insurability, I think you're talking about homeowners insurance?
I believe so is what the question is referring to.
Okay, could you read it to me again, please?
Sure. So is there a correlation between housing availability in certain regions and insurability in the same region?
I don't know, I'm not an economist, so. But I will find out. So if you could, if you've got the information, please. Yeah, on a lot of these, if I can't answer the question or either of us can't, then I'll follow up with you directly and get the answer to you. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer that.
Yeah, no worries. Curious if you have any data on second home ownership.
Do we have anything on second home?
No, we don't have, in this presentation, no, we don't have anything on second homes, no.
Folks are curious about how that has played out in Washington State.
Okay.
If you have data, we'd love to see it.
Okay.
Do your affordability calculations include property taxes, utilities, and insurance?
So it has property tax. It does not have utilities. So in our calculation, we assumed property tax, but no utilities. So that number could go up slightly because that varies widely across the country, as you know. So what we did in our calculation was to look at the average property tax for different areas because we have county information and to fix that into the calculation, but we don't have anything on utilities. But property tax is in there in the affordability calculation, but no utilities. Yeah.
We have another one. One theory has been floated that people will thaw to higher interest rates over time, as they did in the 80s when rates were around 8 or 9%. Curious to know if you have any research that confirms or refutes this, and if you don't have data, do you have theories you want to share?
So can you read the first part of the sentence?
Sure. People will thaw to interest rates over time.
People did what?
Will they thaw to them? Will it be less scary?
Oh.
More likely to maybe not be so afraid of that 8 or 9% interest rate?
So I don't know of any research that. So over time, like I showed on the graph, right, we've seen different cycles up and down of mortgage rates. And during the refi boom we saw in 2021, 2022, we did see that many people came on the market to refinance, but we still see some people held on to that, their high interest rate, like their high mortgage rate, right? And so there's been some study around who are those that were quick to refi and who are those that did not refinance. So there's some research around that looks at people that still held on to their high mortgage rates and why did they do that. So there's public information on that research, but at Freddie Mac, we haven't done any research into that specifically, but there's public research on that, on why people didn't actually, certain demographics didn't refinance when there was like an incentive to do that and why they held on to their high numbers. I hope that answers the question.
Just more questions if you'd like to speak to trends you see specifically in Washington State or trends specifically to affordable housing that maybe you didn't get a chance to highlight in your presentation?
None that I didn't highlight in the presentation. So this is just the research we did in Washington State. Hopefully in future presentations, we can do more deep dives into Washington State because we have the data to be able to do like really cool deep dives and look at different housing indicators. So in the future, we hope to do that. But yeah, this is what we're seeing in the data in Washington State for now.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
If other folks in the audience have a question you'd like to ask, I'm happy to run a mic. Otherwise, let's give our presenter a fantastic round of applause. Thank you so much. One small request. In the app, you will find a button for session feedback. If you found this session helpful, if you found the information to be helpful to you, liked the presentation, I personally loved those beautiful heat maps, fabulous. Please go ahead and comment in the app. It helps conference organizers find what's meaningful, what's valuable to folks so that we can plan better for next year. Thank you so much for your engagement with the session. We really appreciate your time and all of your thoughtful questions. So we'll look forward to seeing you back in this room in about 10 minutes for the next one. Thanks, guys.